Okay, I think we'll start there. So welcome to part 2 of Building Confidence and Managing Anxiety in Your Child webinar. As with last week, my name is not Francesca, it's actually Abby, and I'm a child wellbeing practitioner at First Steps.
And my name is Shakira, and I'm also a child wellbeing practitioner at First Steps.
So this week we'll be focusing on strategies for managing anxiety in your child and building up confidence as well. Just to let you all know that as with last week, we'll be the only people who are seen throughout the webinar, as all your cameras are off and your mics are on mute. But we are going to be filming today's session, which will be available on our YouTube channel soon. We'll also be sending out packs with information, and all of the slides will be on the pack as well. So there'll be no need to take notes throughout our session. And just a quick note about questions. Should you have any questions, please do write them in the question section. We'll be monitoring it throughout the session should any issues arise, but we won't be answering any questions about the content of the webinar until hopefully we'll have some time at the end to do that. So feel free to pop one in if you have one.
Okay, so we're going to start off just talking about the aim of today, which is to first of all reflect and review what we covered in session 1 about understanding anxiety in your child. And then we want to explain the strategies and various tools to help manage anxiety in your child. And then finally, we want to support you in being able to implement these strategies. So before we begin, we want to invite you just to reflect, have a moment to think about what we discussed last week, and think about what you remember from the session, what were the key messages that you might have taken away from this. I'll give you about a minute or so to just think about that. Okay, hopefully you remembered some of the things that we covered last week. So just to review it for you, we covered how anxiety typically presents itself in children through their thoughts and worries and behaviors, as well as physical symptoms as well. Some fears and worries are normal, but can become problematic when they are interfering with yours or your child's everyday life. There are a number of factors that contribute towards the development of a child's anxiety, and anxiety is kept going by the things children do and the things people around them do in response to their anxiety. And as parents, we can respond in ways that are helpful. So it is important to remember that it is within our nature as parents to want to protect our children. It is normal that we will step in to protect them at all costs, especially if our children seem vulnerable. But as we discussed last week, and we will discuss further today, this can have its advantages as well as its disadvantages. We want to invite you to think about the strategies you currently use to help calm your child when they are feeling anxious. So an example could be, do you give them a hug? Do you reassure them? Maybe use some toys to distract them. Think about what works best for your child and also what might not help. And just have a moment to think about that as well. Strategies that you currently use. So today we'll be going through these strategies that you can see and hopefully provide you with a good toolkit for the management of your child's anxiety.
So the first strategy that we're going to think about today is called containment. And this refers to the idea of you as a parent acting as a container for your child's thoughts and feelings until they're able to control and manage them for themselves. So all children feel anxious at times, and sometimes the child might not understand their worries or where they come from. So they might try and avoid certain places or do certain things as a way to kind of control and make sense of all of the worries inside their head. But like when your child was a baby, your job as a parent is to try and understand what's going on for them. Although you may not have any answers or any solutions, just recognizing they're struggling with something and trying to make sense of it, however hard, can help them to feel less alone with their difficulties, and in turn help them to confront the things that they're worried about. So I want you to just take a minute to imagine that you've started a brand new job in a new place with new people, and the job you know something about, but you're not entirely clear what's expected of you. So imagine all of the feelings and the worries kind of bubbling away inside. What do you think in this moment might be helpful for you? And you may have answered that question by saying having a mentor or somebody as a point of reference would be helpful. A reassuring figure whose calm manner and presence helps to reduce anxiety at times of uncertainty and worries. So somebody who will empathize and plan to support you. And exactly the same can be said for children as they face new and unfamiliar experiences. So something which feels confusing and frightening can be made more understandable and predictable for them. For some of you, this might sound kind of instinctive or obvious, and lots of us already naturally respond to our children in ways that are containing, but it's helpful to kind of bring your awareness and attention to the way you respond to your child, and for you to be aware of just how important those interactions can be. So in order to respond to your child in a containing way, we need to be aware of our responses. So for example, a child comes out of school and tells you that they've been crying. How might you respond? Some parents might ask them what's happened. Some might approach the teacher with the child, demanding to know what's gone wrong. Some might get annoyed at the school or annoyed at the child. And this is what we might call an escalating response. It might trigger the situation and feel more overwhelming for the child and out of control. Another response might be to give them a kiss or a way of letting them know that you've noticed they're upset, saying, "It looks like you've had a bad day, let's go home." And when you get home, sit them down with a drink and a snack, ask them about it on their level and talk about it in their own time. And that's kind of what we would call a more containing response. So have a think about how containing you feel you are for your child, and we'll cover more ways to respond in a containing way throughout the session today.
Okay, so the second one is to educate your child on anxiety. It's really important to talk to your child about what anxiety is. And as we mentioned last week, the first step to managing anxiety is actually to understand it. Many children don't understand why they are worried, and it can be quite scary or overwhelming. So telling them what happens in their body and what anxiety is can actually be really powerful. You can use the videos such as the one we showed you last week. It can help your child to recognize their own anxiety by helping them to identify what they experience when they are anxious, what they feel in their bodies, what they're thinking, what they do in response, as in their behavior. You can get them to draw themselves and to draw arrows to each part of their body where they might feel their anxiety. You could talk to your child about this and give their anxiety a name. For example, the worry bully. Acknowledge that anxiety is not pleasant, but it is completely normal. We all get worried from time to time. We all need a bit of help with our emotions from time to time. So to summarize this, for children to be able to recognize when they are feeling anxious and why they are feeling anxious is an important first step in them being able to manage the anxiety.
So next we need to help the child recognize and stand up to their anxious thoughts. So in order to help your child with their worries, we need to know exactly what it is that they are worried about. So if we know what the worry is, then we can think about what they might need to learn in order to overcome it. Their worry might not even necessarily be what you think it is, so it's really helpful to hear from them what's going on inside their heads. So find a time to sit with your child and do this, and be curious and open-minded. So ask open-ended questions such as the one seen on the screen here. So what is it about this that makes you feel worried? What's the worst thing that might happen? What do you think might happen if you? What makes you feel that way? And it's a really difficult thing for children to open up about the worries inside their head. And some might have more difficulty with this than others. So if you think that this is your child, then make sure that you give it a go and use some of these top tips that we're going to cover now to ease the process. So first of all, pick your moment, a time where you're both able to engage and listen. We would recommend not just before the event that they may be anxious of. So if they're worried about school, avoid having this discussion on the way to school. Or we would also recommend to avoid having it just before bedtime. It's also really important to make it fun and rewarding. So maybe for a younger child, you can try and get them to act it out with toys, as play is a really great way for children to express how they're feeling. You could also get really creative and link the conversation with your child's interests. So for example, making use of their favorite movies or storybooks. The film Inside Out is a really great way to open up the conversations about feelings. So maybe watch this film with them and ask them what the emotions inside their brain might be saying. Next, check you've understood what your child has told you about their worries. And you can show this to them by repeating it back to them and asking if you've got it right. For example, after your child has told you what they're worried about, saying, so you are worried about going to school because you think you will not have anyone to play with at lunchtime. Is that right? Next, be empathetic. So how you ask the question should give your child the message that you can see that they're worried about something and that you want to help them. For example, before asking the questions, you might say, I can see you're feeling really frightened. That must be really difficult. Give them the message that you know they're anxious and that this is not a nice feeling. Also, normalize it. This is really powerful. So telling them that lots of people get scared and anxious about different things, and tell them it's really hard, isn't it? It's also really important to avoid dismissing them. For example, by telling them that their worries are silly. It's really common to do this as it feels like it can be helpful, but what it actually might do is invalidate their worries, and they might not feel like they can tell you about them again. And some children might find this particularly difficult. So if they're struggling and saying they don't know what they're worried about or saying different things again, try to make suggestions, but pose it to them as questions, not as statements. So, do you think you're worried about this happening? Or some children might worry that this might happen. Do you think you're worried about that too?
So now you have a sense of what your child is worried about. They have to learn new things about these worries in order to overcome them. They need to learn that their anxious expectations won't happen, and if it does, they might be able to cope with it. For example, a child who's worried that if he gets a question wrong in class, his teacher might tell him off. The only way they can learn this is by facing their fears. It's natural and normal to avoid doing the things we are scared of. We all do this, and it helps us feel better in the short term. Excuse me. As parents, we facilitate this avoidance, as it is natural that we want to make our children feel better. But the child doesn't get to find out what happens when they face their fear, whether it was as bad as they thought it was, or whether they could have coped or developed new coping skills. So to break the cycle, we use something called exposure. Children are gradually exposed to the situations they fear in a manageable step-by-step manner, working their way up towards an overall goal and building up their confidence and facing their fear along the way. The first step to doing this is to think with your child about what their ultimate goal is. What is anxiety stopping them from doing? What would they like to do that they can't at the moment? For example, to stay in bed on my own after my parents say goodnight, or to go and play at a friend's house. Once you have made an ultimate goal, think about an ultimate reward. Find a reward that fits such a big achievement as reaching that ultimate goal. Then break the ultimate goal down into smaller, manageable steps. You can use a feelings thermometer to rate each step from 0 to 10 for anxiety and rank them in order, leading up to the ultimate goal. For example, for them to play in their room for 5 minutes alone with mum outside the door, then to play in their room for 5 minutes with mum downstairs, gradually building it up to the ultimate goal. Make this really collaborative. Get the child involved. Facing fears is a hard thing to do, so try to make it fun and creative. Decorate the plan and make your child feel like they are part of the plan making. For example, the plan could show the child moving up a ladder. We have also seen and done with parents maybe some like rocket ships flying to the moon and stopping off at stars along the way. Get the child to tell you their experience, their expectations for each step. What does the child think is going to happen? And attach a reward to each step to keep the child motivated. For example, if they manage to stay by themselves for 10 minutes, they can have a movie night that night. Begin at the first step. Use the feelings thermometer to rate each step after you completed it. Discuss what they have learned and their anxious expectations. And are they ready to move up to the next step? You always want to discuss that after each one. And repeat the step until the child feels comfortable, and keep going until this is no longer feared, and follow through with the rewards. This is really important, as they need to have the faith in the step-by-step plan, and once again, it keeps them motivated. Try not to break the steps down anymore once you have made them. Your child might ask you to do this, as they may find it too difficult, and it's okay to do this once, but try to encourage them to keep going by showing your confidence in them. So you could say something like, I know it's hard, but I think you can do it. And you just want to encourage them to test it out, reminding them of the reward they will get for their bravery.
So far, Shakira has talked about how to challenge your child's worries and prove that they might not be true or as bad as they think, or that they might be able to cope. But sometimes your child might have a good reason to be worried about what they're worried about, as it might be a bit more realistic. So for example, a child who is worried about getting their homework done because they're finding it difficult. In this case, the child needs to learn what they could do to cope with and solve that problem. So you can use what's on the screen here, which is called the worry tree, which can help a child to understand if there's anything that they can do about their worries. So perhaps you could print this worry tree off, which we'll include in the packs that we'll send you. And anytime your child has a worry, you can get them to work through the tree, asking the questions, and figure out if there's something that they can do about it. So if there's nothing that you can do about the worry, let them know that it's not helpful to think or talk too much about this, and then help to distract them with something fun or absorbing. Maybe you can try and reframe the worry, so let them know that they may be worrying about something that they don't need to worry about. So something at the moment might be, if they're concerned about the coronavirus, you can tell them that the government are working hard to keep them safe and it's not for them to worry about. If there's something that we can do about their worries, then we can use problem solving to help develop a plan of what to do if the worry does happen. And this gives children a sense of control and also develops the skills for them to do this by themselves. And we know that children who are anxious are really likely to think that they won't be able to cope with a situation that they're worried about. And they'll probably come up with lots of different ways to get themselves out of that situation really quickly, rather than kind of pausing and coming up with solutions that will stop the problem from happening again. But we want children to build up their ability in recognizing when they're worrying about a problem which can be solved, and to feel more confident and brave enough to independently solve it. Problem solving might not feel like the most natural strategy that we're going to talk about today, because as parents we have a natural instinct to want to protect our children by helping them through problems. But children need to be able to develop the skills to do this by themselves. So the best thing to do from a parent's perspective is to allow them to problem solve in a really safe and controlled environment. And what we mean by problem solving, so this slide shows a template to help you problem solve worries that might be a bit more realistic. So the aim is to make problems feel more manageable, but more importantly, to build up your child's confidence to manage them by themselves over time. So firstly, we would recommend talking to your child about what the problem exactly is and writing this down. And then brainstorming with them a list of possible solutions. So ask them, what do you think we could do if this happens? Maybe give them some prompts if they're struggling. For example, if a friend had this problem, what might you tell them to do? Or I know someone who had this problem and they tried to do this. Do you think you could try to do that? And it's really important to remember that the solutions can be anything the child thinks of. So there's no right or wrong answers at this stage. And it can be as wild and crazy as it can be. So just to give you an example, a child who did not understand the homework that was set and they don't want to do the work because they're worried they're going to get it wrong. The solutions your child could suggest might be not doing the work at all, emailing the teacher and asking for some extra help, trying it out and seeing what they can do, or asking mum and dad for help. And next, you would get the child to think through all the pros and all of the cons for each solution that they've come up with, and thinking about what might happen if they tried each solution and how good that outcome might be. And then you can get them to choose which solution to test out and encourage them to give it a go. It's really important that you reflect on this afterwards, find out how it went and what they learned, and praise them as well. Praise them for their bravery and for all their effort in trying to solve this problem. This is really important to kind of consolidate what they've learned and also to reinforce this behaviour.
Anxious children often expect that they won't be able to cope in difficult situations and often avoid trying new and challenging things. It's hard to resist the strong urge to help children with new and challenging things, especially if we have past experiences where our children have gotten upset, but this gives a child the message that you don't think that they can cope, sending them the message they need your help. So instead, support your child having a go by thinking about everyday tasks that your child could try in order to build up their confidence and independence. Come up with a list of activities that they might be relying on you for that they could try on their own. For example, tying their shoes or making their breakfast. Show your child what to do if they have not tried the activity by themselves yet. For example, talk them through the steps of tying their shoes. Show confidence in them. Let them know you think they can do it. Convey this in your body language and what you say. Praise them for having a go, even if they don't manage to do it. Small steps, it's still a victory. Tell them you will keep going, and with practice, they will get there. If your child is resistant to trying, don't give up. Give them choices as to how and when they do the task. For example, do you want to make a Marmite sandwich now for your lunch? Or do you want to make a Marmite or cheese sandwich now for your lunch? Giving them that option. Share your own experiences of learning a new skill as well. You could say, for example, when I was your age, I found it tricky learning how to tie my shoes, but I found it helpful to keep practicing every day and I got there. So every child is different, and this is just a generalized table of what children typically are able to do at each age and what you might be able to start encouraging your child to try out independently at home.
So last week we talked about the physical symptoms of anxiety. So for example, your child might be worried about school and you might notice that they've got jittery legs, or they might say that their tummy is aching. And all these body responses are kind of natural and normal, but they can feel really, really unpleasant. But there are lots and lots of coping strategies that can ease this discomfort. So the next part that we're going to talk about is managing those kind of physical symptoms of anxiety. So we really encourage you to try these out with your child and get them to practice them. You can tell your child that their brain is a bit like a snow globe. So when it's shaken up, the snow swirls around all over the place, a bit like our minds when we're really worried about something and our thoughts are swirling around inside our mind. But when you put the snow globe down on the table to be still and relax, then the snow calms down and settles to the bottom of the globe. And in the same way, if we take a moment to be still and relax, our brains also begin to calm down and we can start to see things a bit more clearly. So first of all, relaxing breathing exercises, which are designed to help relax and calm down. So it helps send messages to the brain that the child is safe, that they're okay, and that there's no danger. And there are fun ways to teach kids how to relax. So get your kids to try holding up their hands and trying the 5-finger breathing exercise like the one on the screen. So you get the child to inhale as they go up, pause, and exhale as they go down. Inhale as they go up, pause, and exhale as they go down. And you work your way around the hand kind of slowly, getting them to breathe in, pause, and out. And once you've got to the end, check in with the child, see how they're feeling. Are they feeling calm now? Shall we go again? If they're not feeling calm, repeat it. But you can also try out different shapes like this to use, where they trace their finger around the shape, breathing in and out when indicated. And like with everything else, this is going to be included in your packs. So the next exercise is a body relaxation exercise. And this is helpful when we're anxious because we tend to be really tense without realizing. And this exercise gets children to tense and relax each muscle group in their body. And it helps them to distinguish between the feelings of a tense muscle and a relaxed muscle. So it's also a really great way to de-stress and to relax the muscles. So you kind of guide your child through each muscle and tell them to kind of scrunch up their forehead really, really hard, squeeze it really, really tight for 10 seconds, and then get them to relax it. And then you work through each muscle group in the body. It's really important to guide your child through this if they're kind of to help them go through each muscle. And there are resources included in your packs which make it a bit more fun for younger children, such as getting them to stretch out like a cat. Mindfulness is another really helpful tool, which I'm sure you've all heard of. And this picture kind of illustrates the difference between being like the person on the left who has a mind that is full. So if you notice, he's kind of thinking about all of the things that you need to do in the day or something that's happened in the past. But if you look at the person on the right, she's mindful. So thinking about the present moment that they are in. And we know that worries tend to involve thinking about the future or thinking about the past. But mindfulness is a really great way to help us to pay attention to the present moment in an accepting and non-judging manner. And it can offer relief from difficulties. But it also is really helpful to develop a focus, self-regulation, and also patience. And there's loads of resources out there to try for mindfulness, which we'll be sending you in our packs. The first type of exercise is grounding. And grounding exercises ground individuals to their current surroundings and their present moment. So if you notice your child getting caught up and lost in their worries, they can try this simple exercise called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is on the screen. So you name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Other grounding exercises might include getting them to list every country they know in the world, or everything in the room with the letter of the alphabet or the color blue, and then check in with how anxious they are. If they're still anxious, do it again until they say that their anxiety has come down. There's also the use of guided meditations, and there are loads of child-friendly versions of these online. You could try activity books such as Sitting Still Like a Frog, or there are lots of videos on YouTube of meditations, and there's also a really brilliant app called Headspace. We'll send you all of these as well. And it's important to remember that mindfulness takes lots and lots of practice, even for adults, and it takes a lot of time as well. But you have to encourage your child to stick with it and keep going, and maybe just doing a little bit of mindfulness meditations every day. We're gonna show you a quick example of one that you can do with your child on YouTube. Just give it a go and see how you feel.
Hello, Jamie here. Welcome to Peace Out. This is a quick practice you can do anytime to help yourself feel really good. Firstly, wherever you are, whether sitting or lying down, get comfortable. If you are sitting, make your back nice and long. If you are lying down, get settled so you are happy to be still. Now you're in position. Gently close your eyes. Well done. To start, let's look at what's happening right now in your mind. I'll ask you some questions. All you have to do is think your answers. What thoughts can you see in your mind right now? What are you thinking? Remember, thoughts are like bubbles. They pop up and then float away or burst. Look at them, just noticing them. Ah, there's a thought. And another. Next question. What feelings are here for you now? Have a good look at them, even if they are hard feelings that don't feel very nice. Just look at them, not changing them. They are all allowed. Now see if you can notice your body. Imagine you are shining a torch all over the different areas, having a good look. Is there anywhere in particular that you can spot? Can you notice any tightness or holding? No need to change it. Just look at it. Now you are going to be a Zen ninja and use laser-sharp focus. First, feel your breathing. Your tummy lifting and lowering with each breath. Keep your ninja laser on your breathing. Feel it coming in and going out. Each and every breath. See it. Watch it. Follow it. If your brain decides to wander back to those thoughts, spot it, like all Zen ninja warriors do, and come back to your focus, your breathing, in and out, in and out. Well done. You're doing a great job. See if you can imagine that your breath has made a big warm sunshine light up inside you, right in your middle. See if you can make the warmth spread through your whole body, like you are sending the sunshine down your arms to your fingertips, down your legs to your toes, up into your head and around your face, like you are filling yourself up with goodness. Now see if you can beam that warmth and sunshine further out, filling the whole room you are in, the building, street, town and country you are in, the whole world and universe. Like you are making all this sunshine grow, sending so much light and warmth. By making all this goodness and sharing it like this means everything will be fine. Slowly open your eyes and look around. Here you are, beautiful, brilliant you, ready for whatever's next, with a clear mind and a strong heart. Well done for helping yourself come back to being the best you can be. This is Jamie saying peace out.
Okay. Hopefully you found that relaxing. That's an example of an exercise to do with kind of the more younger children, but there's also loads of different great ones for older children as well. So there's also lots of helpful storybooks that contain lots of messages for children to make sense of their worries. This one on the screen is called The Huge Bag of Worries, which is really great. We really recommend this one. But there are also different books to help children cope with worries, health issues and new experiences, big and small. And we'll put this in our resource pack for you to have a look at. And books and stories are a really helpful way to get children to indirectly talk about these subjects, especially for those who find it difficult to. And kind of the idea of worry time is also a strategy that we would recommend. And what worry time is it's a fixed amount of time when you and your child can discuss any of the worries that come up during their day. And it can work for children and older children as well. So the first step is to tell your child about the plan and to name it with them. So perhaps you might call it worry time, or for an older child, you might call it your check-in time. It needs to be done at a time when you can both think really clearly together, and not when you're tired or hungry or busy with a million other jobs, and not just before bedtime. It might disrupt your child's ability to sleep. So create a worry list that you can keep a record of their worries if they come up between worry times during the day. So if a worry comes up in the day, acknowledge it with your child and make a note of it and carry on with the day. Maybe try a grounding technique or a distraction. This will give your child the message that the worries are not dangerous and that they can be contained. For example, encourage your child to switch off by focusing on something in their surroundings. So if they come to you with a worry, sit them down and get them to notice 10 colours around them. Check in to see with them how they're feeling at the end. If they're still worried, do it again. Perhaps this time labelling 10 sounds they can hear. And as mentioned earlier, these grounding techniques should help them to feel calmer and to take their mind off their worries. It might be nice to use a worry jar or a worry journal for your child to record all of the worries that come up during the day and to jot them down and to bring this out during worry time and to look through them. And this means that they can have a special place to keep all of their worries between the worry time. And then you can go through them together. For some kids, maybe those in the older age group, it might be a bit more helpful to do this more indirectly. So perhaps every evening at dinner, you could spend some time reflecting on the day together as a family. You can make it fun by doing it as a game. So everybody shares their red light, their green light, and their orange light of the day. So the red referring to the more kind of intense emotions that they felt during the day. The green refers to the best part of their day, and the orange refers to something that they're looking forward to tomorrow. And this is a really helpful way to kind of make sure you're checking in with your child, and also gives you a great opportunity for you to normalize their emotions and feelings and to respond to them in that containing way that we spoke about earlier.
So the last strategy we will talk about refers to you and your own worries as a parent. Think about your own worries. What worries you about your child, and how do you manage this? Having an anxious child is worrying. Having a child is worrying. The world at the moment is really worrying, and you may even be quite anxious yourself. It's normal to worry about your child. Look out for any anxious signals or messages you might be giving. Be mindful of your reactions, what you say and how you appear. Try and model calm and coping behaviors. Try not to provide reassurance. We want them to manage their own worries. And we can still reassure and promote new learning. Instead, tell them more encouraging things, such as, I know you can do it. You've done it before. You can do it again. Or, I think you should see how it goes. I feel confident, but even if it doesn't go well, we will have an idea of what to work on next time. Or you could say, I really think you can do this. I was so proud when you asked a question in class last time. These are just some examples. And ask yourself, is your reassurance allowing your child to test out their fears, or is it actually encouraging avoidance, acting as a safety-seeking behavior or restricting independence? Don't collude with them, avoiding the things they are worried about. Support them in gradually facing the fear and solving the problems. Praise them and reward them for their brave behavior, but be really specific. So an example is, you could say, you did so well this morning when you got up and got ready for school without becoming upset. I know you sometimes have found that difficult, so I was really proud of how you just got up and got on with it. It's nice and specific there. These are challenging times, and when we are stressed and full up, taking care of ourselves may not seem to be a high priority on our list, but it's really important that we take the time to look after ourselves, and it can make a big difference. Just like the oxygen mask on the airplane, you can't take care of your child if you aren't taking care of yourself. We would recommend that you give yourself a brief moment of relaxation or time out just for you in your day, every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes. And the last thing that I want to mention is to ask for help if you need it. Think about the best person to talk to. It may be a family member, maybe a friend. We like to help parents to develop what we call their very own backup team, referring to the people in their support network. You should think very carefully about who you would put on your team and what type of support they can offer you. Is it emotional support, practical help? The backup team works best if you let the people who are on it know that they are on it. So think about that and think about ways you could tell them. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the week 2 of this webinar. So we want to thank you so much for joining.
So yeah, now we're going to have a look at some of the questions that have come up. And if you have any that you would like to ask us, feel free. We've got some time.
Okay. I can see the first question we've got here. It says, I'm curious to know your thoughts and suggestions when a child presents aggressively when you know they are anxious. That's pretty common, to be fair, and sometimes it's the whole emotional regulation and not quite knowing how to react to these big feelings and big emotions that they might be having. So I would suggest those coping strategies that we went through. They can be really helpful. It's hard to do it in the moment, especially if they're not familiar with trying those out. So actually, first of all, I would recommend doing these strategies daily, whether it be the breathing or the guided meditation or grounding. Just getting them used to doing these kind of strategies can really help when it comes to managing those big emotions. And then also, I think it's really helpful to name and label these emotions. So I think Abby gave an example earlier by saying, you seem really upset. By actually giving your child the vocabulary for it, that can often be quite freeing and helpful for them. I don't know, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Abby?
I think it's really important to, as what you said, behavior is a communication. So, it's so common that we do see that anger as a response to anxiety. But I think one thing to remember is that in that moment of heightened, really intense emotions, it's really important not to go in there at that moment and start trying to ask them questions about kind of what it is they're worried about and what they're feeling, and to kind of be with them in that moment, and to maybe speak with them when they're calm about what they can do in that moment that might be helpful. So those kind of calm down techniques. With lots of families, we make kind of what we call a calm down toolkit. And you might talk with your child about what they might find helpful when they're feeling really intensely angry. So maybe they need to do 10 star jumps. Maybe they need to run around the room 10 times and then see how angry they're feeling, and talk about that with them when they're feeling calm. And then in the moment, you can kind of say to them, this is what you said would be helpful for you when you're feeling angry. Give it a go, test it out. And kind of going in with that first of all. And just like we said, remain curious, remain open-minded, and understanding that kind of the anger, it's an iceberg. There's things underneath. Hopefully that was helpful.
Great, thank you. Let's go to the next one. I'm curious to know, oh no, that's the same one, bear with me. Okay, a question for later. What if my child, age 14, is struggling to engage with any calming techniques? He doesn't want to do it or doesn't believe it will help. So something that Abby just said in terms of, once again, not doing things in the moment, so having that discussion when they're calm, when they're okay, practicing these regularly, as I said, so daily, because it's unfamiliar to do something they're not used to doing in the moment when they're feeling anxious. So definitely getting in the habit, whether it be first thing in the morning, doing a breathing exercise or something along those lines, but also finding out for your child what works for them, because every child is different. It might be burning off their energy, so it might be doing some physical activity, something like that, but it's about finding what works for them. And at age 14, they definitely have more of an idea of what might work for them. Anything, Abby?
I think it's also all about the way that you present it to them as well. So saying, I don't know, every child is different, but some of the young people that I've worked with have really responded well to, well, this is a really grown-up thing to do, to be able to kind of use these techniques to calm yourself down. That's a really grown-up and kind of, everybody needs to do it, and normalizing and making sure that they know that it's a helpful thing and it's not just something boring. And like Shakira just said, finding their interests and drawing from that and using that in a way to kind of present it to them. So, there's loads of things out there about calm down techniques that kind of would fit any kind of theme or interest. So just have a look what's out there.
Great. And then the last one that I see, oh, I'm seeing loads of thank yous. Great, you're very welcome. This one isn't really a question, but more so just sharing. My child is physical and needs a physical outlet. We got him a punching bag and it worked. Before this, he would self-harm and hit or punch the walls or hurt himself. So yeah, once again, it might be that physical outlet. So maybe some exercise as well. See how that helps. And I say that just because when it comes to the punching bag, that is helpful, it seems, but also there's that aggression side of things. And just I would caution in terms of having that conversation, what if they're feeling that way and the punching bag isn't around, what are some alternatives that he could utilize as well.
Yeah, but I think it's really helpful for you all to hear that you're not alone, that your child is feeling anxious, is getting physical when they're anxious, and it's really common. And we've had 2 people attending today say the same thing. So just know that is a really common response when children are angry. And it's just thinking about calm down techniques for them and what will work for them. Are there any other questions? Thank you for coming. We'll give it another kind of minute or so if you have any questions. We had a message last time that somebody had some questions to ask from last week, so I'm just wondering if they're here, if they have had the opportunity to ask that question again. Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you. We're seeing the thank you. You're very welcome.
We'll just look one more.
Now, look up for the email with the information, with the pack in there, and as we said, it will be available on YouTube later, but we'll still wait for one more minute in case there's any more questions that come through.
And at the end of the webinar, you'll be taken to a feedback survey, and it would be really, really, really appreciated if you could fill that in and kind of let us know your thoughts about today and last week as well. One other question is, if the anxiety is very severe, how can we get a referral for CBT, external counselling or therapy? I would recommend going to your GP, or do you have anything else, Shakira?
Yeah, I'd say going to the GP, and we don't know what part of the wait list you're on, or if you're on the wait list here with us, but it's possible if you're being seen by the clinician at First Steps, they can step up, so to speak, which is to refer onwards to further service as well. So those are the two options.
Yeah. But yeah, I would recommend going, if you're not with First Steps at the moment, I would recommend going to a GP or self-referring as well, we take. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming today, and we hope you found it helpful.
Yes, thank you all.